I think a lot of people say, hey, that's vague. We really want answers. You know, I, there were some things that I'm not going to go into detail on, but I will say that
What's up, Desktopers? Xavier Wills here for Desktop Bodybuilding, and I am back with another one-on-one. And today I'm joined by Justin Shier, the man who's doing the Chicago Pro just in 1 week's time from now. You're one of the favorites going in, man, and it's first opportunity to do a one-on-one with you. Man, how's
yeah,
it all going 1 week out of your pro debut?
it's going good, man. And first off, thank you for having me. I know we've been talking for a while trying to arrange this thing, and it just seems like we keep missing. And just so you guys know, his followers, this guy's hardcore. I told him 11 a.m. work for me. That's 4 a.m. his time, and he said okay. So it's not 4 a.m. now. I adjusted my time, but Xavier, you're hardcore, man. But yeah,
Cheers,
things are
man.
going good. Yeah, things are going really good. I feel great. Obviously, we're a week out tomorrow, so it's that final push. Cardio's high, food's low, energy's low, and I'm just kind of riding off excitement at this point.
Absolutely, man.
And
And
and,
I'll put up
coffee.
likewise.
Yes, sir. There you go. Yep.
Needed at this time of the morning. But
Yeah.
dude, like I remember you mentioning, I'll put up some updates up on the screen so people can see how you're looking in
Sure.
some semi-recent updates. But I remember you saying for your prep, was it for the NPC Nationals last year, was it, or the year prior?
It was 2021, but it was December, so it was like the end of 21.
So I remember you saying for that you really pushed things harder than your coach sort of advised. Like you were pushing extra cardio, you flattened out a bit. This prep, it seems a little bit different because I'm seeing a level of fullness and muscularity that just wasn't there, I guess, back in 2021. Like you were phenomenal, and I was like,
Mhm.
saw your photos and I was blown away by your taper, your waist, everything. I
Sure.
love your physique, but how is it different this time? And are you able to sort of separate yourself from thinking that you're not in good enough shape at a couple of weeks out?
Yeah, I think my previous showings I was with a different coach and I struggled to get in condition, and that was just something I was so fucking deathly afraid of, was like not getting in shape. So like I did my prescribed cardio. They would just be like these times where I'd go and I'd take the dogs on a walk, and I got these trails by my house. And I've talked about this on other podcasts where like I'm walking the dogs on the trails and I see a hill. I'm like, I'm gonna fucking sprint this hill just to get some extra cardio in. And like, here I am. I was like a week out and I was like sprinting these hills and like then coming home and riding the bike for the prescribed 45 minutes or whatever. And I just overdid it. And it was, I think it's a pretty common mistake to try to push things more when really there's a time where you just need to do the prescribed cardio, or maybe we even need to pull back. And I think Matt this year has done a much better job of communicating that to me. And I think I've just grown to understand, to trust his process. And yeah, I'm not exhibiting any of those flattening out symptoms, and I feel much better right now about how things are trending.
And as an amateur as well, you can get away with more of that because
Yeah.
as an amateur, it's like no one knows that if you're just a little bit off your biggest or your fullest, and everyone sees the great conditioning and goes, oh, you nailed it, you know? But
Yeah,
as a
exactly.
pro, you have to bring a certain level of fullness and muscularity, which is, you're competing against the best in the world. So it's like if you're a
Yeah.
bit off that, people really notice. So I think that everyone's done those preps where you push it too far, and people have done those preps where you're like, I'm coming in full, which just means out of condition.
Out of condition. Yeah. Yeah. And, and listen, I'm going to step up next to, Blessing, who is definitely going to be bigger than me, without question. So I think me maintaining that fullness and roundness is going to be really paramount coming into this. And it doesn't mean we're not still pushing for conditioning. I mean, I'm doing, almost 2 hours of cardio, and I think my entire day is like 90 grams of carbohydrates and then, like 10 added fats total. So I mean, like
Wow.
food's very low, cardio's high. Like I just did an hour on the bike this morning, and yeah, so we're pushing. I'm not pushing past what we're supposed to be doing, is all.
Yeah, fair enough. I put out a thing for listener questions as well, and I just sort of want to ask this regardless anyway. Someone says on YouTube in the comments, their YouTube handle is over my dad bod 88, but he says, is he hiring staff for his farm, and can we get some samples up in here? So you're in the weed business, man. So That's
Yeah.
something I wanted to ask about because doing that amount of cardio and obviously putting all the effort it takes for a contest prep, how much does that take away from your business, or do you have things set up where you can sort of step away a little bit?
Well, I'm luckily I have a business partner. My brother and I are partners at the farm. So we own two cannabis businesses. We own a cannabis dispensary and then a cannabis farm. So we are vertically integrated. But yeah, I kind of at 3 weeks out, I was like, hey, I am like checking out. I come by. I'll come by in the evening after I train or something, check stuff out. But as far as like the day to day, I'm handling a lot of that just from the phone. And then there's obviously there's a lot of clerical and red tape work that gets done that I do just behind my computer that most people don't see. So like when you're running like a state licensed cannabis farm, it's not just the manual labor. There's a lot of clerical stuff that gets done, and that's a lot of what I handle anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I do have my brother who's my business partner, and he's fucking awesome. And then my wife and I are partners at my gym. So these last final weeks, I'm really able to kind of lean on those people in my life, and yeah, I'm slowly but surely disappearing into the abyss, and then I'll rise like a fucking phoenix after the show.
Beautiful, man. I love that analogy.
Mhm.
And a lot of people
Yeah,
will be asking questions, I suppose, about like, because I've heard about your weed business. I'm like, is it just a
sure.
dispensary? Is it just a farm? So I suppose, how does it all work? Like, how did you get into this? Because obviously everyone knew when weed was being legalized. Like, were you one of the early guys into that to take advantage of
Yeah,
that?
yeah, definitely. I was actually one of the first licensed cannabis dispensaries in my town. And then, so it legalized in 2007, 8, 16. And then my store was open in 17. So I was right there in that first year. So, it's kind of pioneering a new industry. It's pretty exciting. Obviously there's, been the cannabis prohibition that's still, happening here in the States. And cause it is not recognized federally. So at a state level, it's legal. But yeah, so my brother and I, we're young kids growing weed in my parents' backyard, So like medical marijuana has been a thing here in Oregon for quite some time. So what you're allowed, if you get a medical card, each patient is allowed 6 plants. So I would go 6 plants. My brother gets 6 plants. My mom, my dad, 6 plants. So then we were like, okay, we're doing 24 plants in mom's backyard, So they would let us grow, and then I'm 22 years old, and we're thinking we're gonna grow weed and be rich. Well, you end up growing weed and you fuck up and you lose all your money and you don't make anything, and you rot your whole crop, and then you try again and that happens again, and it's just like years and years of like, I mean, dude, it's like bodybuilding, like how you start training. You're like, that first 5 years, I fucking did nothing in the gym. I just wasted my time, and then started to slowly hone my craft, and then about a decade later is when my brother and I really were, kind of firing all cylinders. I went from 24 plants in the backyard at my mom's house to owning 16 acres that I have an entire 40,000 square foot canopy of right now. I have over 8,000 plants in the ground right now that
Wow.
are in a flowering stage. Yeah, so it's gone grown exponentially over the last few years.
Yeah, and obviously, like Jay Cutler's sort of following in your footsteps in that way because he's involved in some sort of a weed farm and stuff as well. And I've talked to him
Yeah,
about it, and
yeah,
it's pretty wild to think of where we were. I suppose in Australia, we're back a few years. It's legal
yeah,
in
yeah.
one territory here, as it's called, like Australian Capital Territory, where you can grow
Okay.
2 plants per person, but everywhere else it is completely illegal. So
I've
it's
heard.
quite strange.
Yeah, I have some friends out there. Actually, a buddy of mine just came back. He was spent a few months out there with a girl that he was seeing, and he was just like, "Man, there is no good weed out there, and the cost is through the fucking roof." He's like he's like, "We need to get boats and start shipping shit out there." No, yeah, it's a cool idea, but yeah, it's a difficult industry because it's one of those things that it's not just putting a plant in the ground and growing it. There's a much more intricate process that people don't really realize the amount of infrastructure, and yeah, it's pretty insane. So it has taken us a long time to really get to the point where we're at right now. But we have greenhouses and growing outside as well. Then we also have indoor rooms, and then obviously my dispensary. So we're kind of turning and burning now.
Yeah. And you don't smoke now yourself. You said, like, I've heard you on other podcasts saying you were
Yeah,
a heavy weed smoker when you were younger. but not so much now. What's the reason, I suppose? Because I find it the opposite way of a lot of bodybuilders. Like bodybuilders will sometimes get into bodybuilding and then they're like, maybe because they're more high strung or whatever, they find it relaxes them. So you've gone the opposite way and stopped smoking
Mhm.
weed when you've got into bodybuilding. So give me the reasons why that is and why I suppose maybe some guys do get into smoking when they start bodybuilding.
Well, like you said just now, I used to smoke when I was younger, and I was like through high school. I mean, I started smoking like 13 years old, so I was kind of an avid weed smoker at a very young age, which I don't suggest. It's pretty irresponsible. But my brother was my best friend growing up, and when I was 13, he was 16. So him and his friends were smoking weed at 16, so I was smoking weed. So that's just how that went. And then I smoked all through high school, and I ended up getting sick my senior year of high school. That's when I got meningitis, and that's when I lost these 3 fingers. And during that process, obviously, I was in the hospital for 3 months. I've told this story several times, and I'm sure a lot of your viewers or yourself might be familiar with the story. But one thing during that time, I had what's called ARDS. It's acute respiratory distress syndrome. So essentially, my lungs turned into leather, and I had life support, and that life support's breathing for me, and that life support burst a hole in my lung. So I had about a silver dollar size hole in my lung, and I dealt with some very serious respiratory issues for quite some time after that. So just smoking wasn't an option at all. So come a year, 2 years later, where it's like these respiratory issues have resolved, I'm kind of gaining some normalcy in my life. I'm no longer limping around in a wheelchair, and I'm actually resuming my life, because there was a long period of time that was just it was a probably about an 18-month rehabilitation phase. It was not a very short-lived phase. I just I kind of came back to it, and it was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I had a very high tolerance for cannabis. I could smoke all day, every day. It was very much ingrained in my day-to-day routine, and I can no longer do it. I smoke, and I feel stupid. I feel slowed down. I'm just like, my brain doesn't work the same way. It like stifles my appetite. I can't sleep because my mind's just running. Like, it just no longer worked for me in a sense that it did previously. So it just no longer fit and worked for me. And I stubbornly tried for 8-10 years afterwards, intermittently. My brother would be like, "Yeah, here, smoke," and I'm like, "Yeah, smoke a joint, cool." And just like every time, I just felt horrible, anxiety ridden, fucking terrible. And it no longer works for me. But listen, never get high on your own supply. I'm a businessman first. This is my business. It is not something I do recreationally. I do love the plant. I'm still very passionate about the flower, and I think you have to be, in any business, you have to be passionate about what you're doing. So I do still like maintain that love and that passion for cannabis. I just can no longer partake.
And it's quite funny. It's one of those things where some people that smoke will get huge benefit from it in terms of reducing their anxiety, then others will be the
Yeah,
opposite. And it's quite funny because certain people with anxiety, like there'll be one person with anxiety, another person with anxiety, one person makes them more anxious, the other person it brings them down to
yeah,
baseline. Like obviously you've got Guy Sistanino who it makes him less high strung and it makes him more that baseline that he wants to operate
yeah,
at. And then other people, anxiety through the roof, they start panicking. And I actually heard something, I started cracking up the other day, and I think it might have been on the Mutant in the Mouth podcast, or maybe it was on the HD Muscle one where you're on. And you said you said smoking before bed. That sounds like the worst idea ever. He's like, I start thinking about, oh, did I lock my car door? I start thinking about how car doors are made. I'm freaking out. They're made in China. That's weird.
yeah.
Man, I
That's
was
exactly.
cracking up. I was
Yeah,
cracking up at
yeah,
that.
that's exactly it, man. I just start thinking about the weirdest things. You're like, did I shut the bathroom light off? And then you're going, the bathroom light. Did I need light bulbs? I do need light bulbs. Did I order light bulbs from Costco? Fuck, what the fuck, Kirk? You're like, fucking Costco, Kirkland, Washington. Wait, that's actually in Washington. Kirkland's a town in Washington. And then you start thinking, like, what the fuck? Michael Hearn's from Washington. And then I go, fuck, Michael Hearn. Is he natural? So I'm just like going fucking nuts, Like, I'll just be thinking and thinking. I just can't shut it down. And like,
Yeah,
so it just does not. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work for me. And I'm okay. I'm
yeah.
perfectly okay with that. It is one of those things. It's kind of bizarre how some people can smoke, chill out, and it benefits them, and then some people it just doesn't. And I think that's the same with any substance, alcohol, etc.
Yeah, exactly. And it is one of those things where people will get the benefit from it. So they're like, they want you to enjoy the benefit too. So like, have a smoke,
Mhm.
have a do this or
And
whatever.
I think
So
I've been there, dude. I smoked for years where I was like, I like needed it. You know, I used to ride BMX, and you know, I spent a lot of time at the skate park, like riding our half pipes or like the bowls or anything. And like the transitions always felt really fucking fast and quick. And I never liked riding my bike sober. I needed to get high and I needed to slow that shit down. Otherwise, it just felt really abrupt and weird. And yeah, so but now I, I would have no idea how I'd handle that.
yeah, it's quite funny because I guess it makes you feel and get more in tune with the bike or whatever. And some people feel that. I
Yeah,
always wonder what like some
that
professional athletes, like if they get
the
tested,
mind
like
muscle
how.
connection.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Mhm.
you're able to get more in tune with it. But I've got a few more questions, man. So you got I wanted to actually mention your training, dude, because your
Sure.
training, I'll pop it up on the screen now. You execute things, it seems like in the most perfect way, sort of like a Nick Walker. It's very controlled. It's still a good amount of weight. Where did you get this from? Was it because you see a lot of guys like obviously me growing up, I was watching Ronnie Coleman, train and
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
ballistic. So, even though I wouldn't train like Ronnie Coleman or Branch Warren or anything like that, there's still a
yeah.
level of when you think in your head, you go, well, if they're training that sort of sloppily, then as long as I have the tension on, I can sort of go somewhere between strict and somewhere and close to that. So,
Yeah,
where
absolutely. I
did you
think,
pick this up from?
well, I mean, obviously working with Matt is like a huge proponent of progressive overload and control, and like he is, you know, been a big proponent, and as am I, about like pausing in the end ranges. So like, you know, a pause in a press and then a pause where you're squeezing the contraction. Like you'll see here, I pause in the stretch, pause in the contraction. So it's like controlling those end ranges. That's something that you know, he's kind of pushed on me several years ago. But really, I think that Dorian really kind of pioneered this style of training. And I think people don't really understand like Dorian high intensity. You got Leroy fucking screaming and yelling. But if you watch the way that guy is training, it's very similar to this, to where he is going to be hammering that row and he's fucking squeezing, slow, controlled negative, pause and stretch. And it is just a very controlled, precise approach to training that I think gets overshadowed by screaming and yelling. So people think that it's like has to be fucking intense and yelling for it to be hardcore. But you look at, I mean, he was very in tune with his training. He was very methodical and intentional. And I will say, like, somebody that I've really looked up to and admired their training approach for quite some time is Michaela Aycock. I don't think there's
Oh,
any,
yeah, that's a good one.
I don't think there's anybody that is more devoted to like the precision of each individual rep than Michaela. She's so intentional, and if you look at her progression over the last few years, like if you look at her leg training and then watch what her legs have done over the last 2 years, you cannot deny that this shit isn't working. You know,
Yeah.
so I think I think Dorian was my main, I would say my main motivation.
Yeah.
But again, working with Matt has really helped instill a lot of that. But again, I kind of came to Matt because I knew he was like that, and I had a similar training ideology myself. You know, so
That's really cool, man, because I don't think many people would look at even like a female bodybuilder being a top male bodybuilder, especially,
yeah.
or even if it was a few years ago, looking up at Michaela Aycock, because for those who don't know who Michaela is, she's got just an insane physique, brings the
Oh,
most insane conditioning.
insane.
She is like, you can even just tell by looking at her and her progression and everything that she has everything 100% spot on. You can just tell.
Michaela,
Like it's
if you're a fan of Michaela exemplifies bodybuilding. Like
yeah.
she is a fucking hardcore bodybuilder through and through. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, likewise.
Mhm.
Now, a guy who's been prepping, we don't know what show he's doing as yet. I might have some
Mhm.
sort of idea, but it's Carlos Thomas Jr. Now, he beat you
Okay.
in the overall,
Oh
I believe it
yeah,
was that NPC Nationals. So sorry just
had
to mention
had to
that.
remind me. Ooh.
But so he's obviously looking phenomenal. Now,
Yeah,
there's a chance he could be doing one of
very
these
good.
upcoming shows. Like I
Yeah,
don't know which one exactly he's doing. Well, I sort of have an idea, but but he's going to be
you
competing
know
at
you,
some stage.
you son of a bitch.
Yeah, I've been sworn to secrecy.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding.
But he's obviously he's mentioned that he wants to compete this year.
Yeah.
How do you feel, I suppose, about potentially coming up against him at some stage,
Oh
whether it's
man.
this year, in the future? Like, do you think that you can nab him? Because you two are two of the most talked about guys making a pro debut, not just this year, but over the last couple of years.
Yeah, honestly, I'm such a fan of that kid, and he's got such a freaky, crazy physique. I would just love the storyline. Like if he were to be doing Chicago, I think it'd be such a cool storyline for us to kind of come into that show together, and have that nationals, rematch. But I think I was just overwhelmed by muscularity at nationals, and obviously my conditioning was much better, but he just had that freak factor, and I do think right now where I'm at, I think I've put on enough muscle. I think anywhere from 10 to 12 pounds heavier than nationals for sure at this point. I think right now I'm sitting close to 15 pounds above what I was on show day. So I do think that I've made significant improvements to my physique, and I would love the opportunity to stand next to Carlos. Just for obviously I'd love to stand next to him, potentially reclaim a victory, but more than anything, I think he's just a really, really good kid, and I would just love to be able to share the stage with him again.
Yeah, definitely seems like a good human being as
Mm-hmm.
well, and
Yeah.
it would be cool. And he's faced at least a little bit of adversity this year with his ulcerative colitis and stuff. And you've obviously been through a huge amount of adversity, obviously,
Yeah.
in
Well, to
early
be
years as
honest,
well.
during this prep, when he posted that ulcerative colitis, I was actually the beginning of prep. I got a colonoscopy because I was dealing with I had weeks and weeks and weeks of diarrhea, and I was fucking shitting blood, and I was dealing with some issues, and I did have some inflammation in my GI tract that was like a precursor to ulcerative colitis. So I have dealt with a lot of those issues myself, and
Wow.
just working with Matt, and then Dorian also has helped me with a lot of things to help improve my gut health. And then I'm not sure if you're familiar with Robin Strand. He's a
Yes.
HD athlete, but he dealt with a very, very bad bout of colitis through his prep, and like he couldn't take any of his orals. He was using the bathroom 4 or 5 times in between meals as they're peaking, and he had a lot of very valuable things to help me get through it. And the latter stages of prep, I've been able to kind of resolve those issues entirely, and I'm in a much better place. But when he said that, I was like, "Fucking, I feel exactly what he's dealing with because I've dealt with it too." So
Yeah. Oh, dude, I was blown away that Robin Strand got that much better between the New York and I think it was Toronto. The fact he was battling that and to find
yeah,
out afterwards, I was like, "Whoa,
man,
that shows something, man. That
it
is
was
very
it
impressive."
was inspiring, man. I was like, even
Yeah.
Dorian, I was out with Dorian the day before. He's like, I don't know, I just feel like Dorian was almost encouraging, like, maybe you should pull out of the show, man. It's like, it's gonna be really hard to peak and manipulate. We can't really manipulate. He couldn't pull fluids. He couldn't, couldn't use any of his orals. There were just certain things he couldn't do, like you would normally do in a traditional peaking protocol. That they were just handicapped by his this situation. So it was really cool to see him come out on top, and he was all smiles. And I'm a big fan.
Yeah, yeah, likewise. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Now, I want to just ask one more quick question, and I'll just ask a couple of listener questions. We'll wrap this thing up because I know you're obviously 1 week out right now.
yeah, I'm doing
Um,
okay.
good, good. Now, I wanted to ask as well, where do you think you've improved most on your physique? Because we've seen the back shots go up, and
Yeah.
that really blew me away, dude. Because I think someone actually put a side by side. I should have pulled it up for this video, but this just seeing your physique overall was improvements everywhere, but the back
Yeah.
looks super improved. Is that where you've improved most?
Well, I'd say the back is one of the biggest things I focused on this year. I think, we knew that we needed to bring that up. So it was definitely a primary focus. But I'd also just say legs was something that I really wanted to bring up, and I think I've done a good job. I'm nowhere near where I need to be or where I want to be, obviously, but would say the legs and the back, and then unintentionally my calves grew, and I didn't train them a single time. I didn't really train my arms, and my arms grew. I don't know. Those two things I don't really. I do. I'm not going to say I don't train my arms. I do. I do train them, but it was not a focal point. But they seem to respond to the littlest bit of volume. So, but yeah, I
Yeah.
feel good overall about the physique, and I just feel like kind of front to back thickness has improved. Like maybe even dimensionally things haven't like grown exponentially, but it's just kind of that 3D factor from front to back that I think is improved most.
Absolutely. Definitely notice it. Now I'll go to a couple of questions. This question here from YouTube says, will Justin do Tampa and Texas if he does not win Chicago?
It's kind of hard to say. I think I plan on winning Chicago. I really do. I'm in my head. I'm like, I'm gonna one and done this fucker, and I'm gonna shut it down and go to the Olympia. That's just kind of my mindset right now. That's really all I can focus on. So I don't really have an answer to that, whether or not I will. And I think it also depends. Like if I get on stage and I don't win, and it's clearly like, okay, you just need more size, well, then maybe that's a valuable 2 weeks just to shut it down and get to work. But honestly, my mindset right now is just taking this one show at a time. I really want to plow through Chicago, get a win, and go to the Olympia. That's what I want to do.
Yeah, awesome, man. I love that. As well, like I'm almost a little bit sad as well that prize money is such that it is the same as what it was how long ago, 15, 20 years ago. Like when I first started
Yeah.
following bodybuilding, the minimum prize money for pro shows was $10,000. It is still currently $10,000. So
Yeah.
it
And
gives very
listen,
little incentive,
so if I'm going to fly home and I do okay financially, but not everyone's in a position to do this, right? So if I fly home and I fly home to Oregon and then I have to fly back to Tampa, I'm probably going to spend, 1,500, maybe $2,000 on flights between my wife and myself. And then I'm going to spend, get an Airbnb for 4 or 5 days. And then I'll spend, another 1,500 bucks there. And then all the food, tanning and, supplements, etc. Like you will rip through 5K, no problem to do a show, So I mean, that's not
So
that right there really isn't my consideration. I think a lot of things like my wife and I just bought another home and we're going to be moving when I get done with this show. We have a closing date at the beginning of August, so I do have that coming up, and then obviously businesses and things like that do require a lot of me, so that I do have to kind of manage whether or not it's pragmatic to continue to compete, or if I need to just get back to the things that that really provide and support my lifestyle. Obviously, I'm a bodybuilder, but I'm also a businessman.
Yeah. What would it take prize money wise? Do you think, obviously for yourself, it might be slightly different because you do, obviously got multiple businesses, but what would it take, do you think, prize money wise for yourself and for others to, once you qualify for the Olympia, to, if there's a show the next week or the week after, to continue to compete? Because it
Yeah.
used to be, $10,000 20 years ago isn't what $10,000 is now.
Well, I
And
would say 10,000 20 years ago would probably be $30,000 to $50,000 now, with inflation and gas prices. I mean, like, gas prices in the 90s were, $1.10, and I could go, eat a full meal for $3, So
exactly.
I don't know, like it for me, I don't know. That's really tough to say, but I think seeing things upwards of the 25 to 50K range at these shows would be a huge incentive, and I think you could get a lot more people competing for sure.
Yeah. And outside of the Arnold, I mean, I love how the Arnold have up their prize money, the Olympias continuing to up their prize money. It's, what is it now, 400,000? I think it, potentially this year could be 500,000. So that's really good. But we've had the drop off of shows like we had the Arnold Classic Europe, we had all these other contests. There was the, I'm trying to think of what the names were of them, but there was like post Olympia shows where they're giving away $50,000, $100,000, things like that have just disappeared now. And I would love to see some stuff like that come back. I did hear something the other day. There might be a Phil Heath show next year where they're giving away more prize money.
Oh, that's
There's
great.
Classic UK coming back. So
yep,
there's going to be some early shows with some money. So hopefully that comes back and it gives guys, some more incentive to.
Well, I think a lot of these guys are making more money when they're not competing. They're available for guest posing. Like, if a guy is good and in high demand, he can make $5,000 a weekend guest posing, nail down 4 of those in a month. Just because he's not dieting, he can travel and go do this thing, and then he's made $20,000 that month, not even competing, not dieting. So it's tough when the competitive aspect of things can hinder the business side of things. So that I think you see a lot more guys that are leaning into that. So it would be nice to see the prize money get to a place where it was, like I said, it'd be like a more pragmatic approach. Like, hey man, I'm doing this fucking run because if I nail down 5 of these shows, I'm going to fucking win 150K,
Yeah.
But it's like if I win 5 shows, I won 50K.
Yeah,
You know?
it's tough to justify, and especially as
Yeah.
well, there's no guarantee there. There's
No,
no
no, there
guarantee.
isn't. Yeah. So it's like, and then yeah, I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah. So we've got just a couple more listener questions, but
Sure.
we'll have you back on another time. But I did want to ask this one, and we sort of make this sort of the last one. This is from at Virtue Signal 9000. It says has Justin learned anything from social media hiccups? If so, and how can he move forward constructively? So there's that question, but also obviously I've had a ton of questions, obviously about you know, moving supplement companies, all that sort of stuff. So
Yeah.
I want to give you an opportunity, I suppose, to discuss that a little bit because now you've obviously HD Muscle and Dorian,
Sure.
who's there, and I've worked with Dorian and I've also worked with Fouad as well. So I've got
Yeah. Yeah.
experiences in both fields. But how's that been battling through that? Because when I put this up as well, there's going to be a group of people that don't know
Yeah.
you that see things from the outside and they talk shit about you. So that's
Yeah.
something I even dealt with, as well. So how have you, I suppose, managed through that?
Well, I think you it's not just bodybuilding. You're going to see this like tribalism in all sports. Somebody goes to a different NFL team or basketball team. I'm not a sports guy, but I'm aware of how much that upsets people, and I think that's a lot of what you see. But I just first off, I'm extremely happy with HD Muscle. They've been fantastic, and I think what people might not see is that with Hostile, I just didn't quite feel that I had there was like a bit of a disconnect with the brand itself, and Fuad had plans for the company. He was growing the company. He wanted to invest more in his athletes. He wanted to invest more in me. He had some ideas for the app and he wanted me to produce some app content. And, before we started, progressing into these things, I just felt it was necessary to kind of express that to him like, hey, I don't know how comfortable I am engaging in some of these ventures with you if there's some uncertainty on my end on the longevity of this relationship. And we had a discussion basically, and I explained to him that it just didn't quite feel right. And I think a lot of people say, hey, that's vague. We really want answers, and you know I, there were some things that I'm not going to go into detail on, but I will say that in the event that a company feels the athlete isn't a good fit for the brand, they will get rid of the athlete. Now, Nathan Epler was with Hostile 2 months before his contract was up for renewal. They let him go. They didn't feel like he was a good fit for the company anymore, so they let him go. Now, the flip side of that, I felt like the company wasn't a good fit for me, so I left. And I just feel like there isn't the same understanding that I'm associating and attaching myself to a brand and to a company that I don't feel connected with. I no longer felt like that brand represented me. And I also didn't feel like I was doing a good job of representing that brand. So I didn't feel like I was doing my friend Fuad any justice representing a company when I didn't feel in my heart that I was connected with the brand or the mission statement. And that's not to say he doesn't have his demographic and that he doesn't have an amazing company, an amazing brand, because he does. But I just didn't feel like I was connected to it. And it did not feel good to me being there. So I left. And now I'm in a place where I feel like I connect with the brand. I just feel much more in tune and I feel at home. And ultimately, this has just been a lot better for I would just say, for my mental health. But now I feel more comfortable promoting the brand and investing myself into a company where I do feel like I am at home. And it just didn't feel fair to me to stay there, to continue to use the company's money and assets investing into me when I just knew that it just wasn't right. And it's really hard to articulate that sometimes, especially when you're talking about an Instagram post or an Instagram comment. Like, we all have like we've all like in high school you wore like these jeans and then out of nowhere you're like, I don't like these jeans anymore. I don't know, I just don't really like wearing these jeans anymore. And it's like, do I continue to wear these fucking jeans because I got to be loyal to these jeans, or should I just do what's right for me and just follow what feels right in my heart. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So that's a part of why I left. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people have realized they see a connection with myself and HD that I didn't quite have with Hostile. And I think Hostile's done a great job of building their brand with athletes that align with their mission statement and align with their branding and ideologies. And I think Fouad's gonna continue to do so. And that company's not gonna slow down. They're gonna do great things with or without me. But ultimately I just did what I felt was right for myself and what I believe to be right for the company, because ultimately I just didn't feel good allowing them to continue to invest in me as an athlete, knowing that my heart just wasn't in it.
But man, I think that's the mature thing to do, really. Like, and it was very succinct what you said as well. But when a brand doesn't feel congruent with you, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't feel like it's, either serving you or whatever. And you can almost use like a relationship terminology as well. Like, if you're in a relationship, people would say, "Oh, well, you should stay loyal and just stay." It's like, well, I'm sure that other person wouldn't want that. It's not going to serve them. It's not going to
Yeah.
serve
Yeah.
you. Prolonging things that aren't right for each other. So I
Yeah.
think that it's
Yeah.
using it in that terms. And when you leave, no matter what, that person might not, it might cause some sort of friction or whatever. And obviously, this is a very public thing. Bodybuilding
Yeah.
contracts, for whatever reason, the the bodybuilding fans are very intrigued and very interested in it, and they want to know what's going on. And it's almost like the
Right.
same interest when two people break up, if they're big names, in the media or whatever. People are going to want to find out why, what's the dirt, all that sort of stuff. So
Yeah.
it's almost very, very similar to that. And dude, I just want to say the way you've handled yourself, and from talking to you privately, from everyone that I know that's talked to you, no one has a negative thing to say about you. So I just want to say, I think you've handled things brilliantly. But no matter
Thank you.
what, you're going to get those comments, and it's just part and parcel. And this is almost a good thing in a way, if you want to look at it that way, because when you look at every pro that's done something big in bodybuilding, they have gone through a stage where they have faced adversity and faced a lot of, I suppose, negative comments. You even look at the most loved guy in bodybuilding, Jay Cutler. He went through a stage
Yeah.
where he won an Olympia that was debatable if he should have won.
Sure.
Online, it was constantly Fridge Cutler, this, that. Oh, he's
Yeah.
done all this.
Yeah.
He got a lot of negativity. Almost anyone that's done something big has copped that negativity, and you've gone through it early, so it's probably thickened your skin to that, at least in this industry.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
dude, there's it's easy to concentrate on the negative comments, but
Yeah.
it's there's a lot more people that love you out there than hate you. You know what I mean? In
Yeah.
quotations.
Well, I appreciate that. I think, and I've just tried not to be reactive, because I expected it, and I think a lot of people are invested in our storylines, and especially with the podcast, they're invested in me personally. And Fuad and I had a great relationship, so they were invested in that relationship. And it was one of those things that it was a very hard discussion to have. It was a very difficult thing to bring up to somebody who I considered a very good friend at the time, that I just didn't feel connected with his brand. And it obviously, I tried to explain this isn't personal, but how can it not feel personal? I don't at all. I wouldn't expect Fuad to not take that personally, because this is his brand, and it embodies him. And but ultimately I just felt like it was something I had to do. And yeah, there has been some backlash. And but I will say, you know it, there's if there's 100 comments, it's usually 10 are shitty. It's just those 10 just draw your eye. They're the loudest ones in the room. And I've just tried to ignore those, and I try to engage with the people that support me. And listen, I have had so much support coming over to HD, and I've had so many people that just appreciate me for me. They're happy to see me on other podcasts. They're happy to see my face more. And ultimately, I'm just kind of navigating this period in my life as professionally and diplomatically as possible. And I know it'll all smooth over. And I know personally it's for the best for myself and everyone involved. So I'm very happy with the decision I've made, and very, very excited for the future, frankly.
Yeah. And dude, I think that's a good lesson for anyone as well, because you're only sort of used to what sort of negativity has come your way in the past and how thickened your skin is to it. And I'm sure, like,
Yeah.
at first, those comments, each one felt like a hard punch, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
after a while,
Yeah.
it became, the more you're exposed to it, and it's almost a little bit sad, it starts to, instead of feeling like a hard punch to the face, it feels like,
Yeah.
it's like nothing.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah.
even affect you.
Yeah.
It just rolls off your back.
you get a bit jaded by it. And listen, man, I'm new to bodybuilding, but I'm not new to business. And this was a business move, and
Yep.
I think a lot of people can't detach themselves from that emotional aspect, and they're emotionally invested in these athletes. And ultimately, this is a business, and I did what was right for me from a business standpoint, and ultimately, long term, it is what was right for Hosstile in my humble opinion.
Agreed.
Um, so I've I'm taking the punches as they come, because there has been some, but again, more than anything, I've had people be overwhelmingly supportive and nice, and then some shitheads commenting, telling me I'm a asshole, but it's par for the course, man. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, man. I love the way you've handled it anyway. And we've ticked just over 40 minutes and we said 20 to 30. So
Cool.
I'm sorry I went a little bit over,
It's fine.
dude. But
No worries.
I know you're prepping, you're hungry, so we'll wrap it up. But dude, 1 week out, I encourage everyone, go follow Justin on social media, on his YouTube channel. He puts up tons of great content. The links will be in the description below of this video as well. Obviously, you're sponsored by HD Muscle, trained by JP as well for the clothing line. Is there anyone else you want to thank in terms of sponsors? I know obviously your partner as well. There's other stuff I wanted to touch on in this interview as well. And she's a beast in the gym. I saw some of your videos.
Yeah, she is, and she's back here making food for us right now and holding it down. So obviously, a big shout out to my wife. She's amazing. I couldn't have done any of this without her. So, but yeah, shout out to HD Muscle and Trained by JP and everyone that supports me and supports the people that support me. So thank you guys.
I love it, man. Awesome. So everyone, tune in to Desktop Bodybuilding. Subscribe, hit the notification bell button, because I will be bringing all the coverage of the 2023 Chicago Pro. I'll be live, my live watch-alongs, prejudging, finals wrap-up, all that good stuff. So for myself, Xavier Wills, and Justin Shier, we are out. Thanks for watching this one-on-one interview, and if you did enjoy it, give the video a thumbs up, smash that like button, also subscribe and hit the notification bell button for more one-on-one interviews, contest coverage, bodybuilding news, plus much more. Anyway guys, that's it for myself, Xavier Wills, here at Desktop Bodybuilding. I'm Xavier Wills, this is Desktop Bodybuilding, and we are out.